Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity, a show about weirdos. With your hosts, John Fahey, Aaron Peter, and Matt Brousseau.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity. It's a doggone show about weirdos. My name is John Fahey. Joining me is the eternally gorgeous Mr. Aaron Pita. Aaron, how you doing?
You know, it's hard to stay so gorgeous all of the time, you know, but I am doing it.
You are doing it.
And
I can attest to it.
It is good to be appreciated by non-eternal life forms.
Right.
Such as you, John.
Yeah, well, I kind of exist between dimensions or whatever.
That's important. Okay.
Matt Brousseau, you look absolutely beautiful. Better than Aaron, even.
Wow.
After he said all that nonsense.
You fucking motherfuckers.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Yeah, you look beautiful,
Great.
and
Matt,
you
you
sound incredible.
Thanks, great.
Yeah, really do.
Appreciate it.
We're doing great. We got Patreon people signing up every day. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, interaction.
Great
engagement.
We had great interaction on that last episode.
We did.
Some people opening up.
Oh my God, some really heartfelt stuff about Christine Chubbuck and relating to some of the issues she was
dealing
going
with depression
through
and stuff. That was very, very sweet.
Some great love pouring in from the luminiferous ether that we call the internet. So pouring that love right back out to you guys.
Yeah, we do love you guys also. We have a couple of questions. I'm not going to do all of the questions. I'm going to save the Patreon members' questions for the Patreon episode that we're going to do after this.
Very good. Can I amend my answer from last time?
Oh, I don't know.
Which question?
One of the questions
Which
was...
hand?
No. Well, you know, I've been thinking about it. And I'm not circumcised.
Oh, okay.
No.
Right.
No, I want to amend my answer to the question, who would you bring back and have like a dinner with or whatever?
Right.
Yeah, sure, the George Carlin one's a great character. Okay. I would pick Terrence McKenna. For sure, 100%. Because I know I could talk to that guy, or he talked to me.
Right.
For days, years, months on end. And there'd be no subject that would be, off limits or unexpoundable.
Right.
For you or for him?
Both.
Oh, wow, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty fucking good one, Aaron.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one.
I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, how did I not say Terrence McKenna? So, Terrence McKenna.
Okay, very, very good. We have more... Here's a good one. This is from our friend Ivo in the Netherlands. He wants to know, if you had the chance to piss in the cereal of any musician ever, whose cereal would you piss in and why?
Jesus.
That's very, very good stuff right there. I think I can say off the bat, it would probably be all of the Spin Doctors.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. I really, 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 really hate that band.
Wait, why?
It's just like the most obnoxious, hacky-sacking, white guy dreads, college rock.
Mm-hmm.
I feel humiliated when it's on. I feel like
you feel.
I feel humiliated. I feel like they're putting me through a lot of unnecessary shit. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, if you were, like, just taking a shit and it was on, like, on the fucking Muzak or whatever, you would just look up and be like, are you fucking joking me right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like all those times you're shitting in an elevator.
You know what I mean? Like, just like it was over, like, I was just like, it's so unnecessary. And, like, I know the big songs, I really don't like those. And then I caught like an old Letterman where they were playing some other song I never heard before. Equally egregious. Like, real shit. Really, really bad. I also hate that guy from the Monster Mash.
Oh,
I hate him a lot. But he's so bad, like maybe it's good. I don't know. You know?
Right. Schlock.
Live, the band Live. Oof.
Oh,
hate him.
Lightning crashes?
Hate him. Like, that guy can get right out of here.
Wait, why?
I just find it really offensive. I think it was the pinnacle of awful 90s rock. Like, it just went...
Sure.
It was that middle point between, like, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and like Nickelback, right in dead center
Everyone's
of that.
Trying to be the Smashing Pumpkins
is Live, and you're just like, get out of here! I don't believe you at all. Like, you're not intense or interesting. Go fuck yourself.
Very good, John.
Sorry about that, but that's
real.
Yeah, Thank you, Evo, for the question. Anybody else got anything?
I mean, off the top of my head, I would say Chuck Berry, just so he gets a taste.
he gets a taste. He gets a taste.
Yeah.
Though he'd probably
like it.
yeah.
I would probably say someone like a Chris Brown.
Yeah.
You know, not only is your music subpar,
Right.
but you beat on women don't seem to be.
Right. Yeah. I
So
could
that's one. Any of those women beaters, I'd be happy to piss in their muesli.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Again,
You know
R.
what?
Kelly,
And I hope it's
probably
grape
okay
nuts
with
too, because that shit's foul. I'm gonna piss in your fucking grape nuts.
Grape nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grape nuts, huh? What about Raisin Bran?
I like Raisin Bran. I don't even like cereal. I'm not a cereal eater. I think
Right.
it's for
Raisin Bran's got 2 scoops.
for livestock, but Raisin Bran's not bad.
I love them bragging about the scoops in Raisin Bran.
Well, that's good.
scoops?
That's what they sell it.
Yeah,
sell
they're
it
all
all.
obsessed with the scoops.
A lot of raisin cereal and it's got 1 scoop. You know, so it's always good to get that double one in there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Raisin Bran.
So here's some old grapes.
Stephen Parks,
Super fancy
our friend.
Uh-huh. Oh, thank you so much for sending in the clip of the young lady getting pissed on in a parking lot, Steven.
No, that was great. That was
That's why I said thank you.
yes, that was very good
I'm
stuff.
wearing my Cocaine Bear shirt right now.
Yeah.
you
Thank
are.
you,
Look
Stephen.
great.
Thank you.
Stephen wants to know: would you rather get $1 million but have to take a full-fledged shit every 3 hours for the rest of your life, or get no money but you only have to shit once a year?
Well,
Time versus money.
Oh well, listen.
I mean,
I don't think nothing wrong with taking a shit.
Not at all.
And $1 million bucks?
Right. That would go down pretty smooth.
Like what the benefit of taking one shit a year? I mean, like I'm never on the toilet going, oh man, I'm just wasting valuable time here.
Right.
yeah, sure, but it's a 6-hour flight.
Okay, well you got $1 million. Invest it wisely, and
then
and
you
you
shit
get
in
your
first
own
class.
Yeah,
Right.
shit in first class,
Right.
or have your own shit jet.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have like a nice
Shit jet.
Lear jet, very fueled up, full of ceviche.
You're fueling it up.
Yeah, just get one of those Lear jets that runs on your own shit.
Yep.
And,
Biodiesel.
yeah. You just shit out the ceviche right there in your captain's chair.
And believe me, you're gonna.
Right.
It's ceviche.
But yeah, I mean, shitting only sucks for the toilet.
It's
like-
it depends on the toilet.
Wow.
Like,
Some
that
toilets
is
are into
that
that
is
shit.
deep, John. That is,
yeah.
Shitting only sucks for
Yes,
the toilet.
Yeah.
T-shirt material.
No,
Well,
that's a meme. It's having diarrhea sucks for the toilet.
Oh.
That's from Share Zone.
Oh.
But they're absolutely right. They take
not-
it to the diarrhea level though.
Yeah, well, diarrhea changes the game. If that question's about diarrhea, all of a sudden that's a Sophie's choice.
I like
We're
how he
learning
calls
a lot.
I like how he calls it a fully fledged
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
It's no half-baked shit.
Well, I hope it's a fully fledged shit rather than some nugget nonsense.
Yeah, and
You know?
rabbit
I mean-
it looks like grape nuts.
And this is something that might
Tastes like grape.
bring us our final question. Might take us to your segment, Aaron. This is from Mike Broussard. He wants to know if you had the ability to talk to animals, which animal would you choose to get wasted with?
Ooh, that's very interesting.
Well, I guess an elephant.
An elephant.
Well, because my brother, we were talking about elephants and piss. My brother told me, he said that there are stories of elephants drinking some booze, like left over from military base,
Yeah.
and then going back there and storming the base and taking the booze.
Wow, that's cool stuff.
Hey, elephants, they're fun, man.
They probably have some cool ass stories too, because they
Yeah.
don't forget.
Oh, yeah.
They mourn their dead.
Yep.
Yeah. I tell you about that crazy ass story with the fucking elephants that suddenly
the craziest story of fucking elephants?
No, dude.
the,
No, you did not.
the elephants are all chained up and they're doing their thing, you know what I mean?
What, like BDSM or?
No, you know the human imprisonment routine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where
that
they'd,
shtick.
they'd
Yeah,
stab them until they were docile.
Or they
Well,
electrocute
this
them
is,
to prove the.
is-
Oh, that's one I'm saving for another.
Oh, good. Okay.
I forget where this was, but it was somewhere in Asia. But basically, there was, they're all tied down with chains and spikes in the ground and all that shit. And out of nowhere, all the elephants just like fucking go over to their spikes, pull them out of the ground with like their trunks and feet and shit, and pull it, like free themselves. And all the humans are like, oh, okay.
Yep.
And they start grabbing humans
Good.
again with their trunks, throwing them on their backs, and then heading for high ground. It was a flood came.
Huh.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they just knew it was coming.
Yep.
Just saved as many people as they could, took off.
Did they?
The fucking jackasses that are throwing chains around their necks. You know what I mean?
They're
It's
noble
like,
creatures, dude.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, too noble, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah. We should get rid of them.
Maybe we
I
can
think
do
they're
something.
almost extinct.
Maybe we can do something with these tusks. No, but I mean, really, how great is that?
Yeah, that is very good. That is
Yeah.
a very good story. You know that baby elephants suck their tusks like human babies suck their thumbs?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
They're adorable.
They are. They are very, very
They fall
great.
down, they get embarrassed.
They're so cute.
I don't know what is the animal. I mean, like, I just like, I like dogs. I would love to get wasted like with a golden retriever.
Uh-huh.
You know, a penguin maybe.
A penguin.
Penguin would be fun.
Uh-huh.
They got business.
So the question is, if you could speak to animals,
Yes.
which one would you choose to get wasted with?
Right.
An elephant's tough because an elephant could probably drink a lot
Yeah.
before it gets
It's
wasted.
like Andre the Giant.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah, but I don't want to get wasted with like one of those animals that like,
Never shuts up.
no, but they'll just like talk about bummer shit like eating their young or something.
Hamsters?
I don't want to have a bad time.
Like a grizzly bear's like, one time this male grizzly bear came, I had to eat my own young.
Yeah, I don't want any of that shit. I want to have
And then
like,
I went to sleep for 6 months.
yeah, I want to have like good ass times.
Yeah. I bet like a puma.
Puma.
A puma.
Puma.
One of those cool cats.
Yeah,
I bet
yeah.
like a cool cat probably has some cool stories.
Yeah.
Like I was stuck in this fucking thing for days and I went up a cliff and I jumped on it and ripped its throat out with my face.
Yeah. Then I laid down for a very long time because
Yeah.
I'm a cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but I am also vicious, you know.
Right.
I kind of like that. It's cool. I haven't really. It's a very, very good question.
Aaron, I would have to say for you, it must be a bear. You've been talking about bear shit like crazy.
I mean, but they're not very interesting.
Are they not?
I don't think they're gonna have a lot to contribute. Like,
Well,
you know
the-
what I would like to see? Maybe some sort of deep sea creature. Perhaps some sort of a
like a
dolphin
giant
or
squid.
a whale, a squid, something that's going to places that I'm never gonna see.
Sure.
What's down there?
Right.
Talk about it, bro.
Yeah.
We'll open one on, tie one on, and you tell me what kind of cool shit's going down there.
That's a good call.
A bear is just a very, very large dog-like animal.
Right. Okay.
But, I'll chop one up with a bear.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're known
sure.
for it.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're in the animal kingdom. They are the second most cocaine using,
Yeah.
from what I hear.
And it would probably make them interesting.
Yeah,
They had enough
at least they think so.
They had a belly splitting.
Dude, I'm so fucking interesting for a bear, bro. You don't even know.
If you get that bear that ate Timothy Treadwell, that's a good story.
Right.
So yeah, I would say probably like maybe a big whale,
Yeah.
or a porpoise or a dolphin or even a giant squid.
All right.
Right.
One of those.
Okay.
Very good, very, very good question.
Yeah. The rest that we're gonna do on the Patreon later are like all that level.
Oh.
They're like all insane
Well,
like
see
that.
what you get. Patreon, non-Patreon listeners, you get some enticing.
I always thought the fans were gonna ask about like old shows or like facts about people we profiled, and they're like not.
Hey,
Like, what cereal would you piss in?
It's fun to find out what people can see with it.
Funny, they
Of
don't
us.
taste like apple.
So Aaron, you got a little niblet.
Well, yeah, you remember how like kind of the last episode we were kind of talking about how a lot of sex in the animal kingdom is probably just rape,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Well,
Probably.
yeah. Well, I mean, some of it is mating for life. Some of it
birds,
is
they dance and they,
yes.
yeah.
There's these amazing rituals in the animal kingdom,
Right.
And I found this one about giraffes.
Oh, very
Yes,
nice.
giraffes are very, very interesting. Giraffes don't have a set mating season. Like a lot of animals have their own.
that's positive.
Right? They're kind of like the females go into estrus, which is similar to the human female menstruation. Humans we don't know when a female is ovulating visually or anything like that, but we make up for that by having a lot of sex. So we're casting a lot of seed to hopefully spawn.
But
But
if you see a lot of bears in the region, usually that's a giveaway.
oh, because of the
Yeah.
the women love cocaine too, right? But with giraffes, well, apparently it's very hard to do. So they don't. It's hard.
Yeah,
Awkward.
that's-
Yeah.
It's awkward, and
Yeah.
it's hard. It's a lot. It expends a lot of energy. It's risky.
Sure, they're very front loaded.
Yes, a high level of difficulty. So they can't do they can't do it how we do it. They can't just fuck all the time.
Right.
They got to pick and choose their battles. So what the male giraffe does is taste the female giraffe's piss.
Oh, well, there
Yeah.
you go.
No kidding.
Yeah, he saunters up to her,
Yeah.
and he does something that's called the Fleshman sequence,
Jesus Christ.
and he headbutts her right in the ass a number of times, repeatedly,
Until she pisses.
Oh.
until she pisses everywhere. And then he gets a good whiff and sampling of that piss, and he goes, you know what?
His eyes go wide.
Uh-huh. Oh, boy. His neck stiffens up and he's shaking. And he leans down and gives it a good taste. And then, if she's in heat, if she's in estrus, he starts to pursue her, maybe for minutes or maybe days on end.
Wow.
Really?
And then, he'll just keep trying to mount her until she relents.
Okay, we get back
The
to
whole
that
time he's hard as a rock.
Really?
Yeah, it's fearful.
Nice.
They've got
just
large...
tickling the brush.
Huh.
Yeah, pointing true north. Sometimes he'll lick her hind legs just to maybe warm her up a little bit.
Oh, that's good. Foreplay is
Yep.
It's
great.
important.
Yep. And eventually she relents and he mounts her from behind.
Naturally.
And usually...
It's got to look fucking insane.
Yeah, he nuts so fast. He nuts so fast. And sometimes multiple times. And then she just kind of walks away. And what they think, what biologists think, is that this ritual, like many rituals, is basically a, hey guy, are you worth my eggs?
Right.
Are you strong enough?
To be my giraffe.
Is your neck basic? It is also. It's like, is your neck strong enough to headbutt me so I piss enough? And can you pursue me long enough that you could then, knock me up
Wow.
with your superior alpha bull giraffe seed?
Wow.
It's nearly romantic.
It's almost as romantic as human sex. The Fleshman sequence is what it's called.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of giraffe sex is gay sex.
Oh, that's
Really?
nice.
Yeah. I
for
guess.
them.
I don't know. One paper from
Really
1985.
just knock the shit out of each other.
Well, I guess it's
Just get a
probably
deuce on your head?
I mean, you don't have to like trick them into peeing on you or anything. It's probably like, hey man, you want to fuck? Yeah.
I lost this girl miles ago, dude.
You know what they say about giraffes with long necks?
They can see far.
Yeah, it does.
400 yards.
Whoa.
Quick, no one's around. Fuck me in the ass. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got on giraffe
That's pretty
sex.
cool.
But I knew that since there was involved drinking of piss and
yeah.
elaborate mating rituals, you guys might like that. So, the Fleshman sequence.
Right. Right. That concludes Aaron's Animal Corner.
Yep,
Always,
I love Aaron's Animal
It
Corner.
is good. I really look forward to it every time. This is really good stuff.
Piss.
Hey, chop it up, piss it up.
Yeah.
Maybe one of us gets lucky. We'll have our own little Fleshman sequence later tonight.
Yeah.
Wow.
How funny a sequence. There's no flesh, no men. Like
I don't know if
Well, I'm guessing it's the scientist's name.
Yeah, maybe.
He's the first guy that did it.
He's the first guy who's like, well, the giraffe are into it. Let me check this out.
Watch this, long neck.
The Fleshman sequence is.
Yes.
But see, that urine and mating, that's how we trick deer to walk into our scopes in quote-unquote hunting these days.
Right, yeah.
So there's many uses for...
Yeah.
I use coyote urine to keep them animals away from my garden.
Is that a
wait,
fact?
really?
Yes, you can buy that at various garden supply stores.
I didn't know you had
Like
a garden.
Really?
Oh, I'm a
Oh,
gardening,
Aaron, he's
I'm a
various
gardening
peppers in the garden.
enthusiast.
Yeah.
Peppers various, yeah.
Yeah. How much do they pay the coyote for the piss?
Piperum variosum. I don't know. He let me suck it right out of him. I just kept headbutting him until they relented.
All right.
It was just some guy with a leather jacket that said coyote on it.
They call me a real coyote.
My bladder is full.
Now, Matt, you have something completely not related to that whatsoever.
No, pretty much not. But just briefly, to intro this, I want to just briefly mention Paul Mooney. You know Paul Mooney.
Oh yeah,
Comedian, legend.
Comedian, yeah. He's a Richard Pryor has that great when we go to prison, they want justice, and that's what you find, just us.
Uh-huh.
Paul Mooney wrote that line. That's the Paul Mooney line. He wrote with Pryor all the time. And I was thinking about this story I'm going to do, and I was reminded of one of my favorite Paul Mooney lines from the Chappelle Show. and this is where he's reviewing movies.
Right.
And this is from the Last Samurai movie review.
No, another movie this I was offended by. Hollywood is crazy. The Last Samurai, starring Tom Cruise. He's the Last Samurai. Give me a break. That movie was offensive. Hollywood is crazy. First they had the Mexican with Brad Pitt, and now they've got the Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. Well, I've written the film. Maybe they'll produce my film. The Last Nigga on Earth, starring Tom Hanks. How about that?
Ask a black guy sequence.
It's
Negrodamus?
No, it's Paul at the movies or something like
Paul
that.
at the movies. God, so many great Paul Mooney segments on the Chappelle Show.
That's brilliant. Well, this one, it was actually a Patreon subscriber, Nolan Martin. He asked me about doing this profile.
Yes. Thank you, Nolan.
And this is a story I briefly read in some shit a few years ago, and I found it interesting. I just kind of disappeared and never followed up on it. But this one is about what, in theory, the person who is the last samurai of Japan.
Oh, really?
Oh.
And he was many things. He was born in 1925. His name at his birth was Kimitake Hiroka. He was the son of a civil servant, and when he was very young, he was kidnapped by his grandmother from his mom and dad. And she was a direct descendant of the last military dynasty in Japan. She was a direct descendant of the shogun who ruled Japan until the traditional emperor system came in the late 1800s. When he was with his grandmother, she would just basically lock him in her house all day, and he had nothing to do. He just read books. He loved Western books, Oscar Wilde, Hans Christian Andersen.
No shit.
And then she would take him out to kabuki theater. That was his, but she wouldn't let him go outside. She wouldn't let him go into the sun. That was a big thing for her. She thought the sun was bad for him. She
Which
wouldn't
is
let
tough because Japan's the land of the rising.
rising.
Right.
Sun.
It's everywhere.
But at night, there's no sun.
Danielson.
Right.
He wasn't allowed to play sports or play with other boys, so he spent his time alone reading or with his female cousins and playing dolls. And he did this until he was about 12, and then he went back to his family, and his father was a military, not a military man, but believed in a strong sense of discipline. And he would do things like take Kimitake and hold him up to passing trains, like next to the train, to toughen him up.
Jesus.
Yikes.
He was raid his son's room, and anytime he found anything effeminate, whether it was literature or drawings or anything that he didn't think was manly,
right,
he would tear him up and destroy him.
Jesus.
But despite this, Kimitake he goes to school, and he's an excellent student. And he as he was growing up and became obsessed with theater and literature, he started writing himself. And when he was 19, he wrote a story, his first story in general that got any traction. It's called The Forest in Full Bloom, and it's about the narrator who he feels his ancestors living within him, and you harken back to that shogun history and
yeah. And was he kind of was he treated so protectively because he was felt to be sort of royalty? Like, was that sort of the thing? Like, why he wasn't allowed to go outside and stuff?
I'm not entirely sure,
or if that was just maybe her being crazy.
It sounded like she was just kind of crazy.
Okay.
Paternal grandmother or maternal grandmother?
I believe it was paternal grandmother.
Right, so crazy ran in the family on that side.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, I'm going to take away your baby. Wait, give him back. I want to put him in front of a train.
Yeah.
His mom seemed to be very supportive. If he wrote something, he would tend to show it to her.
Yes.
And she was very positive about that sort of thing. But he wrote this he wrote this story, Forest in Full Bloom, and his teachers they enjoyed it so much that they sent it off to a literary magazine where it got published. But they didn't want his classmates to know about it. He was often bullied, and so in order for his classmates not to hear that he was an author, they changed his name. They gave him the pen name Yukio Mishima, and this was the name he would use for the rest of his life. When he graduates at the top of his class, and for that he gets to meet the emperor. He got a gold watch from the emperor.
Hey, nice.
Casio.
But this is right near the end of the war, and
what?
World War II.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's born in 1925. He graduates about 1945.
So he's meeting Hirohito.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the big one, baby.
Yeah, last one.
But when the war happens, often they would have to stop studies, and all the students would go and work in a factory. And one of the factories he worked in was a factory that built planes specifically for kamikaze pilots.
Interesting.
And every morning they would go into the factory and they would say what he called a mystic oath. And then they would build these planes that they all knew. They all knew what was going on with these planes.
I hope this plane crashes so good.
Yeah.
That kind of oath.
Yeah, in essence. But, if you're a kamikaze, you're giving your life up for the emperor, who is a deity.
Yeah.
A living god. Yeah.
So, therefore, you'll go to heaven.
Mm-hmm. The meth also helped.
It never hurts.
Yeah.
Well, eventually it does. But if kamikaze, it helps.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's quick.
So as the war's ending and he's getting up to the age where he could be drafted, the dream for so many young men was that they would die in battle and it'd be a glorious death. And he went to the recruitment office, and the story was that he had a cold, and the doctor thought it might be tuberculosis, and so they wouldn't let him join the army. And so he felt a lot of shame about this.
Yeah.
But he after this, he went and he worked for the government briefly for a year to make his father happy, and he was just completely worn out from it. And his dad was like, "Okay, well, maybe you can try writing, I suppose." And so in 1946, he's becoming a very talented writer, and he has many good manuscripts, and he's not big in any way, but he's good enough. He goes and he visits this author who, Yasunari Kawabata, who would win in 1968. He was the first Japanese author to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Mm-hmm. But this is 46, and he goes and visits him, and he shows him his manuscripts, and this guy goes, well, these are great, and he encourages him. And shortly after this, he publishes his first novel called Thieves. And it's not big, but it comes out, and everybody goes, oh, this is a good young writer. Mm-hmm. And he keeps writing, and in 1949, he publishes the book that would break him around Japan as the author, the upcoming author. And he's 24, and it's called Confessions of a Mask. Mm-hmm. And it's the story of a young boy who is basically locked in his grandmother's house. And doesn't have anything to do but read books. And there's this central theme to it of a boy who believes he's homosexual but doesn't know what that is or how to deal with it. Wow. But he has this story when he's 4, he sees a picture of this knight, and he's incredibly attracted to this knight. And it's this beautiful thing, and he's not old enough to know what all this sexual awakening means, but he loves it. And then his grandmother points out that's actually Joan of Arc, and he gets disgusted, and he says, no, it's supposed to be a strong man.
Wow.
And also, at age 6, this character, quote unquote, discovers that he starts masturbating to this painting of Saint Sebastian.
Oh, San Sebastian.
And it's this Saint Sebastian over the years has become kind of a homosexual icon of sorts.
Really?
Because he's always painted in this martyr pose with his arms up with arrows in him, and he's always cut and hot.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this one.
Yes, his arms up, just like that, Peter.
just like you, Aaron.
Homosexual icon. I'll take it.
Well, I mean, yeah, Jesus is always looking pretty
shredded.
Yeah, pretty shredded, and
I mean, art was traditional art were like that was an excuse for exploration of anatomy.
Right.
That's what I mean. Even did that with comic books.
Yeah.
Comic book characters always have skin tight suits on because it's an exercise in drawing the human form.
Right. Yeah.
And through his writing, in this time especially, he's obsessed with mysterious and dangerous notions of beauty that, and especially male beauty. Mm-hmm. That throughout his life, he would talk about how men's bodies are bodies of action.
Right.
And so these strong men, a body like theirs is made to do. Mm-hmm. It's made to do all kinds of things and force.
Yeah.
But...
Unlike these layabout ladies.
Yeah, they're all plump and Rubenesque.
But his style was also in this old Japanese, I don't know if he was considered right-wing at the time, but this kind of idea of a tempered Japanese, of seeing beauty and remarking on it, but always being kind of a step away from it.
Like respectful.
In a way, but just kind of reserved and not much emotional about it. But,
Right.
But just recognizing that it is there and being able to describe it and the emotions behind it, but without
Losing your shit.
yes.
Yeah.
And
I can't do it.
it's no.
This guy.
And sometimes it can be a cultural thing.
Right.
And in 1953, he starts writing more theater, and he starts writing his own kabuki theater. And around this time, he's exploring himself more. And in kabuki theater, there's these men who dress as women and play women. They're called onagata. And during this time, he starts sleeping with these men and having various affairs with actors who are in his plays, and they're having a great time. And it's not a negative thing in any sense. And he's writing these things, and he's sleeping with these people. And one of them, they go to a club one night, and this onagata, she makes a joke about him, and she says, because he's a small man, he's very skinny at the time, and she says, "Where are you?" And he responds in a way that says, "Don't ever disrespect me like that again."
Trouble.
And
Here we go.
He storms out. And it's in this moment, this is 1955 now, he started acting in some films, he starts singing a little bit, he becomes a minor actor in some films, he's playing gangsters and samurai assassins, and he starts working out 3 days a week. And he wanted to make himself beautiful in a way, because make something beautiful and then just to destroy it is a service of art on another realm to him. And he would say, if my body, if myself was a dwelling, then my body was an orchard around it. And when at last I came to know such a body, I wanted to basically show it off to the world. And he described himself also as like a fashionable sports car for its owner, but the body is doomed to decay. I, for one, will not accept such a doom. And he was always kind of fascinated with the idea of youth and how awful it is to age. Something he never understood is how much Hemingway praised aging and growing older and gaining knowledge from that. He never quite understood that. And when he met American authors, he'd always say, Can you explain this to me? How does this, I don't quite understand it. And especially, why would Hemingway kill himself? It was kind of a detachment from that. But here he is, and so he's doing all these many different things, and he still has an obsession to the West. And in 1956, he writes what some consider to be his best novel. It's called Temple of the Golden Pavilion. And it's based off a real thing that happened shortly after World War II. There's this temple in Japan, one of the oldest temples in all of Japan, and has gold leaf on its roof. And a young monk burned it down, basically. The first time it ever had almost any damage committed to it in its 300-400 year history.
Right, even through the war.
Even through the war. It was a mystical, and just this one guy just sets it off.
It's like, fuck it.
Kind of.
Okay.
But in this is where Mishima starts to really explore the idea of a beauty you become so obsessed with that you destroy. And there's a little here we go, little piece of it. He says he's trying to describe, one of the characters trying to describe beauty, and he said because although beauty may give itself to everyone, it does not exactly belong to anybody. And he says, let me see, how should I put it? Beauty is like a decayed tooth. It rubs against one's tongue. It hangs there, hurting one, insisting on its own existence. Finally, it gets so that one cannot stand the pain and goes to the dentist to have the tooth extracted. Then, as one looks at the small, dirty, brown, blood-stained tooth lying in one's hand, one's thoughts are likely to be as follows. Is this it? Is this all it was? That thing which caused me so much pain, which made me constantly fret about its existence, which was stubbornly rooted within me, is now merely a dead object? But is this thing really the same as that thing? If this originally belonged to my outer existence, why, through what sort of providence, did it become attached to my inner existence and succeed in causing me so much pain? What is the basis of this creature's existence? What is the basis within me? Or was it within the creature itself? Yet this creature which has been pulled out of my mouth and which now lies in my hand is something utterly different. Surely it cannot be they. And so he's saying, how can something so simple and easy to toss away
affect you so much.
Right.
Right. Well, it's
Jesus.
like a corpse.
Yes.
This is all that was.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
all this
all this shit.
all this commotion over this lifeless hunk of whatever.
This thing that we're gonna get rid of in 2 minutes.
Right, and it's also kind of like to I guess to a lesser degree, but kind of in the same almost like when you have this idea of like a crush, and you obsess over this schoolgirl or schoolboy crush, right? And they become this idea in your head
Yes.
that they could never ever live up to, good
Right.
or bad, and then you finally realize like, oh, let's say you take shits too.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was obsessing about you, and you were just a gross person like me.
Right.
Great.
And the emperor.
Yes.
My god takes shits.
Neat little brown boxes.
But yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's he's really obsessed with that shit, huh?
Yes, it was something that seemed to drive him in many different directions.
But also, he had this. He wanted to. He must have been so conflicted, right? Because he also wanted to work out and craft the body around himself to look and to be beautiful. But he also had this kind of like self-loathing about it.
Oh, absolutely. And that picture of Saint Sebastian, I think it's his biographer who talks about it. He says, so he's talking about this kid masturbating to Saint Sebastian. In the painting, was it Gino Bruni or something like that?
Giordano Bruni?
It's Guido Reni. I was way off. It's Guido Reni's painting with, arms up. He's stuck with all these arrows. And this kid's masturbating to it. And his biographer is saying, does he associate himself with Saint Sebastian, or does he associate himself with the people shooting?
Exactly.
Saint Sebastian.
Yeah.
And
Or is it the man in agony that is the attraction? Is it the guy with the toothache that you want to fuck?
right.
You know?
Right.
Or is it the toothache that makes the man?
Yeah.
And so after the Temple of the Golden Pavilion, he becomes Japan's best-selling author. And he starts traveling the world. And as he does, he falls in love with the masculine beauty of places like Greek and Rome, and seeing all these statues, and seeing these beautiful deaths. And so he's firmly rooted in these ideas of older Japan, and yet he still has all these fascinations. His biggest influence in many ways were French and German writers. He lived in a Western-style house. He drank sherry. He smoked cigars. And yet he was very vehemently against Japanese being inundated with Western lifestyle.
Right.
Of course.
And so in 1958, he's 32 years old, and he's considering marriage. And so one of the people he considers marriage with is someone named Michiko Ashoda, and she's now Empress Michiko. She moved on to then marry the guy who would become emperor.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
But he does marry this one woman. Her name is Yoko.
Oh.
But he has two conditions for the marriage. It's an arranged marriage, and he has two conditions. One, she must have no interest in his work.
Weird.
And two, she must be shorter than him.
Ugh.
And he's 5'1".
Oh, God. Come on.
That's his kid. All right, real quick. Has he met her already? When he puts these conditions, like, hey, listen.
Well, before
know you're
anybody.
5'3".
Before anybody.
Okay, it's before his conditions previous to ever even meeting or considering Yoko. It's not like he met her and he's like, well, if you want to get married, you're going to have to lose a couple inches.
Yes,
Right,
yes.
Yeah. Listen, you're going to have to lose that neck before I fucking drink your piss, you crazy giraffe.
I love you. I hate you. I'm
Don't ask me about my work.
I'm going to go fuck these guys for a minute. Man, my teeth hurt.
What if you got interested during the marriage? What if you were like, I can't talk about it, but you know what's fascinating? My husband's work.
He does what?
What'd you say?
Shut the fuck up.
I just thought he liked bodybuilding.
Here's a little secret I haven't told anybody. I'm 5'2.5". Shh. He'll kill me if he finds out.
It's very cruisy.
Oh, God.
So maybe Tom Cruise really was the last samurai.
Maybe.
Where's lifts?
And so as he keeps building his body, he keeps exploring that strength in different ways. He starts training to be a samurai. There's this, I forget what the term is, but there's this festival of sorts where they carry shrines. And these shrines are incredibly heavy, and it takes 25, 50 men to carry them. And from this he understands the power and how meaningful it is to work in a group.
Ah, interesting.
And work your body is great for your mind, and to work with a group is even better. This is a whole different feeling than working on alone or even sitting and writing all day alone. Mm-hmm. And in 1960, there's this thing that happens in Japan called the Anpo Treaty. And I need to give a little backstory for this, because it's a treaty. It's basically I want to say reboot, but it's the USA and Japan are re-signing their treaty, kind of making new terms after World War II and re-signing it. Now, after World War II, something very interesting happened with the U.S. and Japan treaty. And originally, the U.S. signed an incredibly progressive treaty with Japan. Mm-hmm. And it offered things. So the goals were for the USA were demilitarizing and democratizing Japan. But it also did things like it wanted to remake government industry civil institutions. They wanted to remake those without the military aggressiveness. Mm-hmm. It encouraged unions. It encouraged their workforce to unionize and have pride in their work. And it abolished the secret police. They protected workers' rights with a new trade union law. Mm-hmm. They removed 200,000 people from public office who they deemed wartime leaders or ultra-nationalists. Mm-hmm. And then, basically, as almost immediately after it was signed, Douglas MacArthur comes in and he goes, "Oh no, the Chinese." And they slowly dismantle all of these pieces one by one. They went from a purge to then a de-purge, where all of these wartime people were put back in because the United States was worried that Japan was going to be their only front against communism. Mm-hmm. So they needed to have military there, and Japan needed to have military. And then the United States would do things like if workers in factories started protesting and having strikes, the U.S. military would help the Japanese break up these strikes.
Right.
And so Japan, having been ravaged from World War II in ways that are completely unknown to us in so many ways.
Oh yeah.
Never before seen and not seen since.
Yeah. You think about this. Tokyo was basically the size of New York. 40%. Imagine if 40% of New York was gone.
Yeah.
Just from bombing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful map where it shows all these Japanese cities, and it relates them to American cities of the same size. Places like Cleveland, 60% gone.
Jesus Christ.
In destruction. And Japan had this understanding like, let us never do this again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen what war does to us.
Yeah.
And now let's do everything we can to not ever be in a position where we have to go to war.
Did
Mishima.
Did he get some of his kind of like beautiful destruction, creative destruction ethos from what happened to Japan?
Well, certainly the glorious death.
Right.
That is beautiful destruction. Young men in their prime just being torn apart.
But also these amazing cities being blown to smithereens, and then being built back up better than they ever had.
But also traditional Japanese cities being destroyed, and then the very people who destroyed them
coming in,
building it with their culture and their supplies.
Yeah. And there is so many bad, horrible examples of American post-war colonialism and rebuilding places in our own image. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was probably the best time for it to happen if you were on the receiving end, because that was around that time, like Roosevelt was trying to come up with like the Second Bill of Rights, which it meant you had the right to a job. Mm-hmm. You had the right to health care. Mm-hmm. You had the right to all these things that he never got to see through. But a lot of the post-war things in post-war Germany and post-war Japan,
in Europe and Asia.
Yeah, we didn't get it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them got it over there. A lot of things stayed in the ideas of like kind of the new constitutions of the new countries after that. So while we dismantled a lot better things there, like that was a lot of the the rebuilding teams had that shit left over in their heads, you know, which were a lot of very good policies, the likes of which we haven't seen in our own country, but Americans were pushing abroad in the 40s.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's kind of like how your parents make all the mistakes on the first kid.
Right, yeah,
And then like the second kid's like, oh yeah, we did this one right.
Yeah.
You know, you're fucked up, but here's the keys to the house.
Yeah, don't talk to your brother.
And another thing the U.S. did when MacArthur came in, they brought this banker from Detroit, this quote unquote one of the greatest bankers in America at the time, this guy named Dodge from Detroit, and he was like, we need to
Dodge Caravan.
It might as well, but I don't think there's any relation. But he also did this classic American thing. He's like, oh, we don't want too much inflation, so I'm going to institute a thing he called the Dodge line, which was basically just pure austerity.
Yeah.
And it did not help the country grow.
No, it never does.
No. But so these things are happening. In 1960, the Anpo Treaty is re-signed.
Can you explain austerity to for anybody that doesn't know real
So
quick?
it's basically like, in order for us to get the economy working again, we need to starve everything we can out of the economy. Basically, like
Squeeze every penny.
to the point where you're dismantling government programs because they cost too much without actually understanding that the government is making more money. Every dollar the government spends, they get $7 back or some shit.
Right, yeah. And it takes money to make money, so austerity never fucking works.
And then you do things like, oh, we don't have enough services to cover this, we'll privatize it.
Exactly.
So then the people who need it the most are paying more for it.
Yeah.
And all austerity does is kind of just cut off the people who need help the most. So the people at the top can get whatever positives that comes out. You know, it's basically like a big tax break for it.
Yeah.
Like a $2 trillion tax break.
Right.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
But another thing that happens after the treaty is that the U.S. forces the Japanese emperor to tell his people that he is not a deity.
That was when I watched, I think it was Ken Burns, The War, and they talked about that. That's one of the most mind-blowing things to think about is, okay, you have this, the power that you were supposed to just obliterate, you know. They come and they rain two, I don't know, demons out of the sky as if from hell, blowing up two giant cities, and then you force your god to admit, I'm just a guy, I'm going to sign this treaty saying unconditional surrender.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, what a shift.
Yeah.
180.
Yeah, and there's like, you know, I mean, I've talked about it like on the show before, but there's all these repercussions of in the Civil War with the Confederates and in the Second World War with the Germans and the First World War with the Germans and the politics of post-victory humiliation.
Yeah.
And where it can lead after that.
Weird porn.
It turns out.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, luckily in Japan, like it wasn't as bad because, I mean, it's amazing, first of all, that America did not force the emperor to step down. That is incredible.
Yeah.
But
there was a big discussion in the treaty. It was I forget what the phrase is, but some sort of ultimate surrender, which is like the Americans were like, you have to surrender everything, and Japan was like, we will not surrender on this one condition. You cannot make him. That's the only thing you can't do is you cannot make him step down.
right,
Because what are you going to replace it with?
Oh,
but I mean,
American guy.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
Exactly,
it's just like
exactly, and that just then you have what happened with Germany. You have a backlash that becomes World War II.
sure, but you still have a massive war of international aggression. But imagine Hitler didn't have to step down.
Right.
It'd be fucking. We'd all be like, "What are you fucking shitting me? Guy's a lunatic."
Right.
But you know, it like on that level, it's still kind of mind blowing.
Yes.
But also, there's no doubt that the Japanese, if we weren't gonna toe the line on that one rule, had a lot of fight left in them, and it could have been a fucking nightmare.
Sure.
You know. Yeah. So, but it's crazy.
Well, one of the results of this is by making him say he's not a deity. What that does is that means everybody who was a kamikaze is now their deaths are all in vain.
Some jackass. Yeah. You went from being a fucking martyr
doing
to
it
being
for God.
some dick
A
face.
messed up loser. Messed up rotten tooth in the palm of some guy's hand.
Was there meth in this tooth? Let's smoke it.
Dude, I heard meth makes you lose your teeth. Whoa.
And so leading up
Smoke the
to
scabs on his face too.
Oh, John, come
What
on.
happened?
Come on, we're a wholesome show about drinking piss, okay? That's eating scabs. Picking boogers and shit.
and
Sorry.
no, it's fine. And so, you know, one of the effects of the Emperor having to come out and say that, Mishima, he would later make a movie called Voices of the Heroic Dead, where basically, in speaking for all the kamikazes, he just made a movie where it ends with a kamikaze getting in a plane and riding off, and him basically repeating over and over, saying, well, in essence, what is this for now?
Oh my God.
What is this for
Jesus
now?
Christ.
What is
Jesus.
this for now?
Was that super inflammatory?
I mean, it flips culture on its head.
Sure, but I'm saying, was the reaction to that? I mean,
No, his
it was
reaction to
20
that.
years- 20 years
his
later.
reaction to that was incredibly normal. I mean,
No, the public reaction to that movie. What was
Oh.
public reaction?
it was fine. It was not a huge thing. By the time that movie came
It
out,
was 20 years after the war.
By the time that movie came out, he was already starting to fall into kind of a right-wing fanboy type of lifestyle.
yeah.
And we'll get to that in a second. And so, back to 1960s, this Anpo Treaty. Here's Japan again giving in to America, even after America had been testing all of these nukes in the Pacific
Yeah.
for years. You know, 1954, there was a Japanese fishing vessel that went out, and one of the guys on the vessel died from radiation fallout. Just because they were too close to a test.
Yeah.
And then their food was sold to people all over Japan, and no one knew about it.
Right.
And then in that same time span, the U.S. tested 5 more nukes. And so Japan's like, war is still hurting us, even though we're not at war anymore.
Right.
And so this treaty is signed, and basically the students and kind of the left of Japan, they riot over it. And they do things like they storm governors' mansions and and they hold them hostage, but in a very not threatening their lives, but
Right.
here I'm here to make a point.
Right.
And for Mishima, in response to this Anpo Treaty, he wrote a book, a short story called Patriotism. He would eventually make a movie out of it, and it ends with it's based off this coup that was almost happened in like 1936, I believe it is, where some Japanese soldiers thought about doing a coup.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to work out, so they all committed harikari.
No shit.
Harikiri.
Yeah. They, I think,
To what end?
in hardcore
to stop the
history,
war?
most recent hardcore history, I think Dan Carlin talks a little bit about
Really?
that. Yeah.
I don't know exactly if it was to stop the war, but kind of to unite all the divisions.
Interesting.
And so because
Because I think the emperor was they considered him kind of a softie. Mm-hmm. He didn't.
The generals wanted to go further than the emperor did.
Yes.
Right.
But because he was the emperor, he couldn't.
Yeah.
If I remember
So they wanted
correctly,
to kill
because
God.
because he was still kind of if you want to call it a beneficent dictator, like he wouldn't outright go out and say go kill this person type.
Yes,
of stuff.
I think I remember learning this before too, that he was on the not far right spectrum of the military,
right.
as far as like aggression.
Yeah.
But with things like Pearl Harbor, the military was just like, this is a no-brainer. Like it's just kind of the thing people like Americans forget.
These Americans are sitting ducks out there, sipping Mai Tais and shit.
But it was like, a lot of people are saying like, it's like, the sneaky Japs and all this shit with Pearl Harbor. And it was like, militarily, entirely sensible move.
Yes.
Like 100%.
Yes.
Like really should have kind of been seen coming. On a pure strategy level.
Right. And it kind of was. But...
Right. Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue, Matt.
No, it's fine. And so in this story, there's a group of I don't know if they're generals, but soldiers who are going to commit a coup, and it's found out, and it's one lieutenant's job to then go and kill them, but he's friends with some of them, so he can't do this. So it ends with him committing harikari on himself, and then his wife watching him do this, because according to the book, she must witness this, because this way, then he can live in history. And then as soon as after she sees the life has left his body, she cuts her throat and falls on top of him.
Ugh, yikes.
And Mishima made a movie of this.
Yeah.
Where he played the lieutenant. And the movie ends like the book. But because it's a movie, there's music to it. And so at the ending, he's playing Wagner.
Kurt Wagner. No.
During this harikiri.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a German composer.
Right.
Yeah.
Over this incredibly meaningful Japanese ritual.
Yeah.
And it's from Wagner's Tristan and Isolde, which is this story where basically Tristan, it's a story where Tristan, this whole thing.
It's a Romeo and Juliet.
It's a Romeo and Juliet type of thing.
But older.
Yes. And then it ends, this is the song from the end where Tristan is dying and Isolde runs in and says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're dying. I love you." And he dies and then she follows shortly after.
Yeah.
Very similar type thing. Mm-hmm. But again, it's
he
just...
fetishize the West while hating the Western influence.
Yes.
Hating his teeth, but loving his teeth out. Right.
And in 1963, he releases a book of photography of him. Someone took pictures of him. It's called Torture by Roses. And it features this picture I'm going to show you of him as Saint Sebastian.
Wow.
He's cut.
Yeah, he's looking...
He definitely nutted on this for sure.
But his photographer, one of his photographers said this thing about him, and he said, at this time he was showing up his body a lot more, and one of the photographers said he was always getting shot mostly naked, but never full figure, because it was tougher to have a strong lower body than upper body. So in most of his pictures, it's either cutting out the legs or it's a low angle, so you can't
miss
see.
leg day, bro. Can't skip leg day.
So he's a man constantly proud of his figure, but also
Right.
And because I think it was a biographer again. He said there's two sides to his character. There's a very, very nasty side and a gentlemanly side. He was part gentleman, part gangster, and he was always kind of going back in between these. He would have these dreams where he would be massacring. This is a real quote: massacring white youths on marble tables and eating the flesh of their bodies.
Jesus.
Yikes.
Good God.
And in 1965,
not nightmares,
No.
dreams.
Right. No, yeah.
I enjoyed these.
Yeah.
Jesus.
I had a dream last night.
Would you like to hear it?
Let me tell you about my dream.
Small naked white boys on porcelain.
Gorgeous marble tables.
Stained red with blood. Their blood.
Sliced open white. Boys. Youths. So supple.
Is anyone else's teeth hurt? It'd be funny if he spoke in that accent.
Hate the tooth, not the toothache, dude.
I am the tooth fairy.
about the the movie was called Patriotism, the one where with the harikiri. And he says he doesn't want to bring it back. He just wants to inspire the youth.
Right.
And in 1965, he writes another one of his, it's like a classic novel of his. It's called The Sailor. The English title is The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. Mm-hmm. The Japanese title is basically 2 or 3 words, but it's also one of those Japanese phrases that has no direct translation.
Right.
And it was kind of like a play on the Chinese phrase for tugboat, and I can't really explain it.
Right.
But the essence of the story is about a young boy who his mother's a widow, and one day she meets a sailor who's in the Navy, and the boy is amazed at how tough and masculine this man is, and the boy used to hang out with this young group of toughs who would do things. They were led by this kid called the Chief, who was like 11, and they would like find beautiful things like a kitten, and they would dissect it. And people say, well, this is just evidence of the curiosity of
Right.
But also, so the kid, this young boy, he starts obsessing about this sailor and how tough and manly he is, and the sailor, his name is Ryuji, and he says something, I've never done much, but I lived my whole life thinking of myself as the only real man. And if I'm right, then a limpid, lonely horn is going to trumpet through the dawn someday, and a turgid cloud laced with light will sweep down, and the poignant voice of glory will call for me from the distance, and I'll have to jump out of bed and set out alone. That's why I've never married. I've waited, and here I am past 30. There's a man just in his early 30s who's saying the only way to get glory is to go out in that ocean and heed the call.
Right.
And in the book, the mother finds a job for the man at her department store. She works for a department store, which is a very Western thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And she finds a job for him there, and he takes the job. And this young boy who he found a peephole in his mother's wall, and he'd watch them fuck. And it's a whole nother thing there.
Right.
Yeah.
So with him, and he talks to his group of kids, his friends about this, and they all decide that the only way for this guy to achieve glory now is for them to poison him and throw him in the ocean.
Huh.
Jesus
And
Christ.
so the book ends with them poisoning the man's tea. And
That's the way for him to get glory.
yes.
Right, because working in a department store is no life for this guy.
And here you have the back and forth between the old Japan
Right.
in Western.
and
Yeah. And also, he's what, single and 30? Like our friend Christine Chubbuck? That's not going to do.
yeah. Lonely piece of shit.
easy.
It's like, I'm 30, for Christ's sake. What?
My Learjet's almost fueled up. That's heavy.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be leaving something out if I didn't ask what is kind of the I guess acceptance level of homosexuality in Japan throughout this entire time frame of his life.
I mean, I'm not really sure.
It seems like there's which in a lot of cultures that there's kind of a reserved set of the elite that's
Yes.
allowed
Yeah,
to be,
yeah.
which he
Right,
seems
well,
to
especially
be.
like the kabuki actors.
Sure.
I mean, one of the actors they interview is still dressed as a woman, still
Yes.
goes as a woman.
Right.
And it didn't seem anyway like this was some
taboo at all.
Yeah, not in a way like it was here.
Geishas.
Right. Very good, Aaron. Very good.
It's all hidden in plain sight.
Right. So they're gay shahs of Iran.
Whoa! I never thought about it that way. Iran, so far from my sexuality? Wait, huh? We are dumb.
Yeah.
I am dumb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I listened to profiles yesterday. I found out the Shah's gay.
Well, we're not allowed there anymore. Now, we get to the late 60s. Now, the book came out in 65. So he's near his mid to late 30s now.
60s Japan, everyone's wearing suits. It's
Yeah.
Western as fuck.
Well, in 68, his mentor, that guy, Kawabata, he wins the Nobel Prize in Literature.
For what?
For, I forget what his book is.
Some novel.
A novel he wrote.
Okay.
Because he was also a famous novelist. And he was the first Japanese guy to ever win the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Wow.
And Mishima, when this happens, he realizes that means I'm not going to win it for a long time.
I gotta poison this guy. Throw him out to sea.
Because his thinking, probably not incorrect, is that they're not going to give it to two Japanese guys in a row.
Right.
Right, but there's other years
Yeah.
to live.
Right.
Right.
But
I mean, if you want to be an old, disgusting bastard.
But that is something that he despises.
Right.
He finds old people disgusting.
Yeah.
He cannot stand it. He finds
Old
young,
balls.
strong men, beautiful, old, yeah.
Well, young, strong men are beautiful.
And in 1969, there's a riot near the University of Tokyo, I believe, right next to it, in this 9-story clock tower. And these students hold off. Again, they're protesting.
Post-war conditions.
Yes, and they hold off the police for a few days. It takes 8,500 officers to clear these guys out, and no one's using guns or anything. At one point, there's an American reporter who runs up to the Japanese reporter and go, "Just shoot him."
Yeah,
This is very American.
Right.
Just like kill these kids. So like there's a
They
bunch
don't
of
have any guns.
Yeah.
Shoot them.
there's a bunch of casualties, but not deaths. Just people getting beaten. One person was blinded. That was it. But it was just like the cops would show up. They would try to get in, and if they found any kids, they'd beat the hell out of them. And
Right.
move on to the next one.
Yeah, the Americans like, why don't we nuke them?
But Mishima sees how much anger and force these young kids have, and he decides that he is going to start his own private army with university kids.
What?
And so I forget what the first name is, but they eventually go by this name called the Shield Society.
Whoa.
And they have 3 rules. And I didn't write them down.
Everyone's fucking.
Do not talk about Shield Society.
Dude.
I should have made a note. I didn't write that down. So I don't know what their 3 rules are, but I'm sure there were things like, have fun out there.
Do not wear a shirt. Be cut.
From the waist up only. Well, this is one of the interesting things about Japan is it's one of the only few places in recorded history or just history in general where, and this is a little bit further back than what you're talking, where they achieved the technology of guns. They got guns, and then they got rid of them for like another 200 years. They deemed them to be clunky and non-graceful and just kind of like...
Well, also, surely America was dissuading them from having any kind of militarization.
What I'm getting at
in
is...
German society,
I'm
too.
talking
before that.
I'm talking about way before that. I'm talking like...
really?
Like in the 1600s. They had guns for like 200 years after, gunpowder and modern and rifles and stuff like that. And then they were like, we're not into it.
Yeah.
We're getting back into this whole samurai shogun thing.
One of the reasons why that last shogun dynasty died out and was taken over is because American ships showed up, and the Japanese they were like, we don't have this technology. If we want to be on their level, we have to change everything we're doing here.
Yeah.
And so then they and then around that time, I believe the emperor system
Interesting.
took over.
Yeah. They were like heavy isolationists. They really like had
Yeah.
the advantage of being isolated, so they could just kind of do that for a while.
Right.
And then they got guns again.
Right.
So for this army, Mishima, he said it would be the least armed, most spiritual army. They didn't have weapons, but many people in the army and in the government thought a right-wing militia would be actually very helpful. And so what they did is they let him train with the army. They let him bring his little mini army to army bases and train.
His mini unarmed army
Yeah.
to train with the real army.
Yeah. And here he is, all of a sudden he's like, now, I mean, has he ever felt manlier, I guess?
Right.
There's all these things. And
Of all these youths.
Yeah.
Yes.
they would parade around official buildings. They would parade before events. They had a blood oath, which is always nice.
Yeah, that's great.
But through this, he met the man who would be prime minister, and he talked to him, and that man introduced him to the prime minister. And through the prime minister, he met with members of the armed forces, senior members of the armed forces, and there was kind of a far right rich figures who were also very pro right, and they gave the army money to kind of like give to Mishima.
Interesting.
And so he was kind of getting paid to do this.
Right.
And one of his things that
To what end?
well, no
Well,
one-
they want to see some kind of spine coming back. They're still from that old school of
So honor and morale
Yes.
type of thing.
and who knows how can we use these guys?
Right,
we have
right.
we have an extremely popular author. He's not as popular as he used to be. Once the book of his pictures comes out, people are center and left authors in society. It's kind of like it's getting kind of weird.
His legs are weak. Yeah.
But the army also had this. A lot of people in the army they were like, if we need nukes. We must have nukes, and Mishima was also very. He said if we're going to bring our honor back and our pride back, we have to have nukes too.
Right.
Right.
And so he fit in with many of these. Just because you're in the army doesn't mean you're far right.
Right.
But if you're far right, the army's a pretty good place to be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think it fits.
But at the same time, all the 18-year-olds doing push-ups in the world is not going to replace a 1 megaton warhead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Have you seen what those things can do?
You're going to need at least twice as many kids
Right.
doing twice as many push-ups with half the clothes.
Just flexing all over the world.
Through the 60s, he started working on this 4-part book series called The Sea of Fertility. And at the end of the 60s, in 1970, he finishes it.
Uh-huh.
And, it's 4 books, and so they each come out at different times. And in 1969, one comes out, it's called Runaway Horses, and he has a character that says, how oddly situated a man is apt to find himself at an age of 38. His youth belongs to the distant past, yet the period of memory beginning with the end of youth and extending to the present has left him not a single vivid impression. And therefore he persists in feeling that nothing more than a fragile barrier separates him from his youth. He is forever hearing with the utmost clarity the sounds of this neighboring domain, but there's no way to penetrate the barrier.
So kind of like, I'm not a girl, not yet a woman.
No, kind of like,
Spears.
those were my greatest days and they're behind me.
But also, they're so close I can touch them, but I don't have any like accomplishments to speak of. Is what I'm getting at. Like
Well, as an adult, yes.
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 I think maybe I'm misinterpreting, but
But of course, he does have great accomplishments.
That's, yes.
right.
But
Yeah.
but are they things he values? And in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. He was very, as Brian said, he was sadistic, but with that is always some sort of masochism.
Right.
You cannot separate those.
And you don't get narcissism without self-loathing,
Yes.
right? You know, he was I want to be beautiful, I want to work out, but fuck, am I getting old? Fuck, shit.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And so in 70, he finishes the final page. He cancels all of the upcoming events in his diary. And on his desk, he leaves a note, and he writes, "Human life is limited, but I would like to live forever." Then he calls the media to the army base he was training at that day. He takes 4 students with him. The students, he goes to a general. He says, "General, can I meet with you?" And he sits down with the general, and he says, "General, look at this sword. Is this not a wonderful sword?"
Jesus fucking Christ.
And General goes, "Oh, well, that is a nice sword." And then his students take out their swords, and they tie the general up, and they hold him hostage. And Mishima says, I need to make a speech to all the soldiers here. And if you don't call them all out, I will kill the general. So he goes out into a balcony, and all these soldiers come up, and he makes a speech to them. And one of the things he says, "Japanese people today think of money. Just money. Where is our national spirit today? The Jietai must be the soul of Japan. The nation has no spiritual foundation. This is why you don't agree with me. You will just be American mercenaries. There you are in your tiny world. You do nothing for Japan. I salute the emperor. Long live the emperor." And he's being heckled by this point, and he turns around, and he walks back in to the room next to the balcony. He sits down on his knees. He opens up his shirt.
Oh.
He takes out his dagger,
Fucking Christ.
and he stabs it into his stomach.
Damn.
Now, the second part of Harikira is that someone, your best friend, ideally, is supposed to then take out their sword and chop your head off.
Wow.
Now, the narratives that all came out immediately after is that this is exactly what happened. Years later, the narrative is that the student that was supposed to do it got so sick he couldn't. Then the next student came up and chopped him in the head and couldn't get his head off.
Wow.
And then all those guys were arrested.
Wow. Damn.
Jesus.
That's good stuff.
And then the reverberations were never felt.
Nothing.
All the right-wing politicians that were asked about this say, that guy's crazy. And I don't know why he'd do that.
Good thing he killed himself.
Wow.
And there's another famous Japanese author named Nobuko Lady Alberni. She married an Englishman named Alberni.
Right.
Who was some sort of rich man. And this was what she said about it. She said, "His death was a political embarrassment. We were joining the industrial nations, and here comes this writer killing himself as if the clock was put back 2 centuries.
Damn.
He tried to fit in so many different compartments, and in each one, he already existed. That was scorned and intolerable to Japanese, brought up with Confucius thinking that if there is a stink, you put a lid on it."
Right.
And he was I think she said, his posing was a need to show his true nature, but his true self was masquerade.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
His true self was masquerade. The medium is rumor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, plus his book, The Mask. You know?
which they later adapted into the
Jim Carrey movie.
picture.
Very
Or
famous.
Eric Stoltz as well. Mask.
Yes, also The Mask. I think hearing about all this makes me think that there was a lot of post-war humiliation on the level of maybe not post-war Germany after the First World War, or I suppose the South after the Civil War, but I think it was just that the Japanese had a far better way of dealing with it and just adapting to the times, and also the times were becoming more international and high speed and technological and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was like, we don't have time to reclaim the national pride because things are not going that way anyway.
Right. We don't have time to turn back the clock because the clock only goes one way.
Right, and it's not really going to be about taking it back with fucking aircraft carriers.
Right.
We're not going that way anymore.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially since there's nukes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen? We're going to install a new fucking emperor. It's going to be you, and then we're going to get nukes before we get nuked.
Mhm.
You're a psycho.
Yeah.
I mean, it does make a lot of sense.
I mean, yeah, sometimes, those there are misguided yet glorious attempts at sending a message.
Yeah, well, it's, for such a country that's so steeped in, death before dishonor.
Right.
There was a lot of guys like, the Aum Shinrikyo cult was very much about, kind of that same kind of fascistic thinking. And they were also a spiritual army and all that shit. It's all complete Buddhist monkey shit until, you get some guys that know how to make some bombs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, yo, let's take the fucking place. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's very deeply steeped in their culture. And it is like, we should be the chiefs, and if we're not, we should kill ourselves.
Right.
Which is very extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very straight edge.
Right, but yeah.
Well, that is the blade used.
Yes.
Right, yeah. But I mean, I think at a certain point, Japanese society was like, we're not going to get ahead killing ourselves in battle or killing ourselves because we didn't go into battle.
Right.
So let's stop.
Killing ourselves.
Right. It was probably a woman's idea, is my guess.
Somebody rational.
You know what I mean? It's like,
You know how much effort I had to put into making one of these people?
Jesus Christ.
And you're just fucking crashing them in aircraft
Now I got to kill
carriers.
myself on top of you?
Yeah.
Like, I have to watch you die and then...
Jesus Christ.
Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, about...
Giraffes have it easy.
Like his whole... It's very confusing in many ways. And sometimes I don't know if he's forcing himself to believe... I mean, I understand the whole samurai culture is you kind of just, you don't think about these things in some ways. But he had a life of so many contradictions. Sometimes I wonder if he just turned himself off from them just so he could continue.
He's a homeschooled indoor kid.
He was also centuries after the samurai were extinct. It's as if I today was idolizing the cowboys, and I wanted to live the life of a cowboy, and I had some weird fetishized notion. Yes, Brokeback Mountain. You and me camping.
Absolutely,
yes,
dude.
Stemming the rose. But that's how you have to look at it, is that this guy was centuries removed from the true last samurai. And even the samurai before him were centuries removed from the original samurai of the Edo period.
But it does probably, there's probably a grandmother like telling him like, you're the fucking chosen one, stay inside, let his imagination
you're blaming it on women, great.
No, but like let his imagination run wild with him, and it's just his books and stuff like that, and
You're a special boy.
and just be told that you're immaculately special, and then just even being such a literary artist type, it's somebody that is just like in a very imaginary world. And then there was just a bunch of pragmatic people that were like, no, thank you.
Right.
Yeah,
you tie in an authoritarian father holding you up to a speeding locomotive.
Yeah, because that's great in a book.
Yes.
And it's not as a
not
system
good,
of government.
No.
Right.
Cutting open a cat to catch beauty,
Right.
to dissect beauty is okay in a book, but even Harikiri, he said suicide is always defeat itself, mostly, but Harikiri sometimes makes you win.
Uh-huh. Not this time, buddy.
Right. I mean, and maybe if you're
some 19-year-old half chopping off his head. Shit, that other dude barfed, and I just cut his head off. I'm gonna barf now. Can you take over, Tim?
Everyone's barfing.
I didn't know we were gonna coup today.
Chop it more. Start sawing it.
And that's the thing. A lot of these university kids, they grew up with his writing.
Yeah.
And
This is not like the was in the book.
Yeah,
the book was better. The general's like, untie me, I'll cut his fucking head off, you pussies.
and this idea of recognizing beauty but being detached from it.
Right.
You know? And now all of a sudden they're like, we gotta kill. Wait, whoa.
Yeah.
I signed up for the watching of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty good stuff, man.
It's a pretty crazy story, dude.
That's pretty wild shit.
It's
It's our first. That's our first patron suggested profile.
Oh.
Very, very nice, Nolan. Thank you.
Nolan, thank you.
Can I read one? I think you know, through all of this, there's many weird things, but I think this is a good quote from him to kind of that is much more positive. If I may. Leave him on a slightly more positive. This is also from Runaway Horses, which is one of the books that is like it's 4 books, and each book is the main character, or what basically the main character, I guess. There's 2 main characters. One of them is they're both friends, and then one of them dies, and the other one keeps living his life, and then each book, the one that died comes back as a different person, and they're recognized by their old best friend as a different. One time as a judge, one time as a woman, one time. So it's and each time it's in a different. Very specific time in Japan, you know, pre-war, war, post-war, and so you'd see him kind of going through his own life in many ways.
Interesting.
Like. But this is from, I think it's the 3rd book. It's called Runaway Horses, and he says the purest evil that the purest evil that human efforts could attain, in other words, was probably achieved by those men who made their wills the same, and who made their eyes see the world in the same way. Men who went against the pattern of life's diversity. Men whose spirits shattered the natural wall of the individual body, making nothing of this barrier, set up to guard against mutual corrosion. Men whose spirit accomplished what flesh could never accomplish. And it kind of blows my mind that
He's so conflicted.
he could write something so beautiful about how good diversity can be and how bad it is when there is no diversity. And yet he himself was constantly struggling with his own diversity and the diversity Japan was going through.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the kind of person that would kind of effectively get obedience because he doesn't really believe in it.
Unless it was by a samurai.
Yeah, my
sorts.
obedience. I want my diversity.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
I want the kind of diversity that I want, right? Like he did, like you mentioned, he later kind of understood the power of people working together in groups, but he still had this base as a kid of being alone all the time, hyper individual, right?
Yeah.
And kind of loathe. And then this was also a time when communism was taking root, so he probably like despised that as well. But what a fucking weirdo! Just like a walking contradiction.
Yeah.
The Masquerade.
And is he still like a very popular author figure, literary figure?
He is. I don't want to say he's back. At the anniversary of his death, there is often a gathering, and for years after this, Japanese authorities were worried that it would cause an uprising of sorts.
Yeah.
But it kind of faded out, and I think now he's being recognized. There's an award. There's a major Japanese literature award in his name.
Yeah.
And I think the trouble that it didn't even cause that much trouble. It was all on himself, really.
Right.
And so all of that has kind of been recognized, but his works are the things that have remained.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't and accepted, and there his writing is often amazing.
Do you think that maybe in some ways it was like, the first heckles come in and he immediately sees the chance to kill himself because maybe that was what he was really hoping would be the outcome anyway?
Yes. There's a rumor that when he went back in after the balcony, he said, "I don't even think they heard me." And whether... I interpret that as the message never got through.
I think maybe he was just like, I just want a glorious death.
Well, that was absolutely. I mean, the movie patriotism. That's him practicing it. Everybody who had an intimate relationship with him and saw him working on his body saying he often talked about how the destruction of beauty, and he wanted to make himself beautiful so he could destroy it.
Wow. Jesus Christ.
I'm not going to kill myself with these extra love handles hanging out.
And
these Yokohamas. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there was another author who talked to him, and he basically said to the author, he said, I don't think I have anything else to write.
Wow.
And so suddenly all of his motivations are suddenly, and so he kind of twists whatever that is into, well, here's the way for me to go out without feeling the failings of getting old and not writing anymore.
Yeah.
And in some way live forever.
Yeah. I'm going to die surrounded by young, firm,
Strapping.
college boys barfing. Don't even know how to fucking decapitate a writer.
Can't even decapitate a 5'1", man.
Jesus Christ. Here I am.
Aim low.
Here I am, literary giant, head hanging half off, because this fucking bespeckled freshman.
What good are all these push-ups if you can't jack my tiny head off?
Take your shirt off while I hang here. Man, that was great stuff.
That
Thank
was
you.
great.
That was great shit.
Very deep.
I think we're going to take a little break and then come back to a Patreon episode.
I think we are going to do a Patreon episode.
And
I'm going to talk about briefly about Brazilian music.
Very
and I know we
nice.
have a few listeners in Brazil. If you're not on the Patreon, please join the Patreon just so you can answer my questions about Brazilian music.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. We love you, everybody. My name is John Fahey.
I'm Aaron Pita. I love you as well.
Good night, guys.
Wait,
Matt
Matt.
Brousseau.
Oh, I thought
No. I stepped on Aaron.
No, you're well.
We're all great here. Thanks for listening.
Everything's great.